Hello, Florence, my lovely. We're ready for chapter 9. It's called Missives. I think that means like letters. Let's find out. A pattern emerged. Mary began each day scrambling for the basin and clothes and breakfast amid the door banging of her sisters, Fanny and Jane, and the wailing of baby Charles. As Mary entered the coach each morning and the not her baby brother Charles would hand her a bundle of envelopes he'd picked up from the Wollstonecraft slot at the Times. Each envelope would contain a case or a question, or in some cases, just nonsense that people would send for reasons Mary could not imagine. The envelope bundle would remain unopened in Mary's school bag throughout the morning's tutorial sessions while Mary listened attentively to Peebs and Ada read the newspaper. At noon, the girls would retire to the balloon where Mary would read the contents of the envelopes aloud. Ada would lean back in a small wicker chair almost to the tipping point and listen with eyes closed. "No," said Ada at the conclusion of each reading. Mary had stopped asking why after the first dozen and had ceased becoming frustrated after the second. Some of Ada's no's were obvious. Some cases were too broad or too far. There were just the two of them, and they had to remain fairly close to the Marylebone house. And several cases seemed unpleasant in a way that didn't feel all that adventurous. But others Mary was sure would appeal to Ada, or at least to Ada's desire to put clever criminals in the newspaper. So far, she had been wrong. "No," said Ada once again, at the completion of another letter. There was only one more in today's bundle, and Mary opened it with a resigned pull of the letter opener. "All right, this is one from Miss Rebecca Verdigris." "Aha," said Ada, without opening her eyes. "What? I haven't even read it yet." "Name in the newspaper. Go on." "All right," she says. "Dear Wollstonecraft detectives, some pleasantries, and here we go. Dire need of assistance. Precious object stolen. Constables have apprehended my maid, who has confessed, although I am certain of her innocence." "Honestly?" asked Ada. They've already apprehended the thief?" Here's the picture of the two of them looking through the letters and talking it out. "Well, they've apprehended someone, but Miss Verdigris here insists they've gotten the wrong someone." "Well, that's interesting." "I'm sure it's awful," said Mary. "But it would take a clever criminal to put the constables on the wrong criminal. So that's a yes, then." "Are you?" "Yes." "Are you quite?" "Certainly." "What about this one?" Ada was determined. "Right then," said Mary. "I'll ask Charles to deliver a message to Miss Verdigris in the morning. Today. Ask Matilda to do it." "Matilda?" asked Mary, confused. "Your friend, the one who lives downstairs. "Anna, your maid?" "That's the one." "Well, today then. We'll draft a note for Anna and send for a carriage." Ada rose suddenly, flipping open the side hatch and letting a blast of cool air in. "You won't need one," said Ada, pointing north over the rooftops of Baker Street to the rising green slope of Regent's Park and Primrose Hill. "Our case is right there." That was a short chapter. Next one is called Rebecca, chapter 10. Things had progressed rather quickly that afternoon. Ada had dictated a note in reply to Miss Verdigris' request for help, which Mary softened and sprinkled with appropriate courtesies. Anna had been dispatched with the message, and this mission pleased her tremendously, as it was the sort of thing done by a lady's maid, which she wanted to be, and not a housemaid, which she was. Anna, of course, knew nothing of the secret nature of the message, and it seemed to her perfectly ordinary for a young lady to ask another to come visit, even though this had never happened before. The only issue that remained was what to be done with Peebs. He had been picking scraps of paper off the drawing-room floor. Ada had developed a habit of hastily drawing notes about things that had nothing to do with the day's studies, then crumpling them and tossing them at him absent-mindedly, when he saw the imposing figure of Mr. Franklin looming in the doorway. It wasn't so much that Mr. Franklin made Peeves nervous as it was that his appearance made him feel that a vast bronze statue had suddenly sprung up without explanation in odd places about the house, the bottom of the stairs, or the middle of the hallway. Just something large and solid that had to be dealt with, or at the very least walked around. Mr. Franklin did not, or possibly could not, speak, but he made himself perfectly clear through a variety of subtle expressions. The one he offered Peeves, by raising his left eyebrow ever so slightly, seemed to say, "Come with me," or "May I step on you, I may step on you by accident, and it is not likely that you would enjoy the experience." So when he turned and walked downstairs, Peeves followed dutifully. Down the stairs, through the entrance hall, down the back hall, and around the corner to the upper kitchen and an open door Peeves hadn't seen before. It was the distillery closet. Various vats of things in the process of being pickled, bottled, fermented, or preserved were kept in the little closet. Everything from onions and pickles to cleaning solutions and boot polish. Mr. Franklin raised his hand in a "in you go" fashion, and Peeves reluctantly complied. It was only when the door closed behind him and the lock clicked in place that Peeves noticed the distillery had no window and that it was suddenly very dark. He said to no one in particular. Clearly, achieving his aims in this house was going to be more difficult than he had imagined. Peeves being now conveniently locked in the distillery closet, the girls were ready for Miss Verdigree's arrival. Anna brought tea to the downstairs parlor, which rarely saw any use these days, with the Baroness in the country. And by 3 o'clock, the three girls sat in the tall white parlor with its long drapes of crimson velvet, thick gold frames bearing small dark paintings of presumably dead people, and very little clutter, taking stock of one another. Mary thought Rebecca Verdigree was very well turned out. She was poised, and her hair was set in careful curls, and her dress was both fashionable and tasteful, and her manners were ladylike. Ada looked at her as if she was some undiscovered species of sea creature mysteriously washed ashore. "I don't mean to sound anxious," said Rebecca to the girls, "but when do I get to meet the Wollstonecraft detectives? This is a matter of some urgency." "Oh," said Ada, that's us." "Wollstonecraft? Wait, us?" asked Rebecca politely. "Wollstonecraft. Us, me and Mary." "Miss Verdigree," offered Mary, concerned at the return of Ada's choppy sentences. "I realize this is unusual. Please do forgive me for interrupting, but are you quite certain that the two of you in this room are in fact the Wollstonecraft detectives?" "Yes, entirely certain," reassured Mary. "And," continued Rebecca, "you'll hopefully not consider me rude for inquiring whether either of you have ever done this sort of thing before?" "Well," answered Mary slowly, "not really," said Ada curtly, "but I'm very terribly clever." "I see," said Rebecca, who then began to cry. Mary fetched her a handkerchief. "No, honestly," started Ada, "I'm terribly clever. Everybody says so. What are you doing?" "I'm crying," said Rebecca through tears. "Why? Didn't you hear that part about me being clever?" "What Lady Ada is saying," explained Mary, "is that we're certain we can solve whatever problem faces you and put your worries to rest." Mary paused for breath to offer Rebecca a moment to collect herself. "Perhaps you can begin at the beginning." "This concerns the events of Saturday evening," began Rebecca. "Your coming out party?" asked Ada. "My party, yes," said Rebecca. "How did you know?" "It was in the newspaper," said Ada, "and someone has stolen your acorn." "How could you possibly know that?" asked Rebecca. "It was in the newspaper. It said that you were to be presented with the acorn of Ankara on your birthday. And now you tell us a precious object has been stolen. It could not have been clearer." Mary and Rebecca both blinked at Ada, a bit stunned. Mary recovered first. "Rebecca, please tell us about that night, won't you?" "Yes, right. My late uncle left me a necklace in his will. It is to be given to me upon my 16th birthday. He was an adventurer before he met his fate, and he acquired a pendant in the form of an acorn, which was a gift to me. And someone stole it, said Ada. Indeed, as I have said, that very night. It was in our family safe, had been for years, awaiting my coming out. And that evening the acorn was placed around my neck by my fiancé, Mr. Datchery. You are to be married? Interrupted Mary. Yes, that's what fiancé means. At 16? That would be how old I am, yes, explained Rebecca more calmly than she felt. Mary supposed, being 14, that her own coming out would be less than 2 years away, at which point she would be introduced to society and expected to entertain offers of marriage. At once, all concern for the case at hand was replaced with a feeling of dread. Please continue, said Ada. At the end of the soiree, which means party, I know what it means, groaned Ada. Very well, at the end of the soiree, I put it on my vanity in my bedroom. By morning, it had disappeared. Stolen, said Ada. That's correct. Ada pondered only for a minute before declaring, Your maid took it. Well, yes, that's what she says, said Rebecca, nodding. I'm sorry, questioned a suddenly baffled Mary. Who says? Yes, my maid, Rosie Sparrow. She says she took the acorn, but I simply don't believe her. Did she give it back? Asked Mary. No, that's just it, explained Rebecca. She confessed to stealing it, but insists that she does not know where it is and that she cannot return it. But she confessed quite readily. So she must still have it, said Ada. No, she does not, and I don't believe she ever did. Why would she lie? Asked Ada, mostly to herself. Criminals usually lie to get out of trouble, not to get into it. Rosie is no criminal. I am sure of it. I have no explanation for her false confession. Just as I said, no ideas as to its whereabouts of the acorn. Where, asked Mary, is Rosie now? In Newgate prison. She turned herself into the constabulary. I'm never going to get that word right, but it's okay. Confessed the crime, and they've locked her up before the trial. But the constables searched her person and her room and the rest of the house and found nothing. If she's a clever criminal, they wouldn't have found anything, mumbled Ada. If she were a clever criminal, she wouldn't have confessed, said Mary. Good point, said Ada. Rosie is no criminal, clever or otherwise. I keep telling you. It should be fairly simple, really, interrupted Ada. It wasn't an elephant, was it? I beg your pardon, replied Rebecca, still upset and unable to make heads or tails out of Ada generally. Acorn, stolen, as you say, not by an elephant, I'm assuming, continued Ada. No, agreed Rebecca, not an elephant. Well then, see? Now we're getting somewhere. So a person then. Well, yes, surely, but not the maid. Rosie, yes, not her. Someone in London? Asked Ada. Again, yes, but... you see, with each answer we come closer to the solution. That is precisely how it is to be done. There's a method to this sort of thing. We proceed with the method and arrive at a conclusion. It's all in the plan. Rebecca looked at Mary, not sure what to make of Ada's speech, and composed herself. Mary interjected. What did the constabulary say? They say they've caught the criminal. Apprehended, they call it, added Ada. Apprehended the criminal and obtained a confession. They say Rosie must have sold the acorn or hidden it for later. But they're wrong, I just know it. Rebecca began a new round of tears. All right, said Ada, let us assume Rosie is no criminal. That means there's another criminal who is not Rosie and is not in prison. Agreed, said Mary, let's assume that. So, continued Ada, all that's left is to find the real criminal, find out why Rosie lied about being the criminal, find the acorn, and get Rosie out of prison, cried Rebecca. Yes, well, I knew there was another thing. I have to meet all of the variables. Variables? Rebecca asked. In the equation, Ada replied. She means, explained Mary, the people in the house. Who else was in the house that night? Who else might have taken the necklace? Oh, well, usually there's just my mother and me, but my late uncle's friend, Mr. Abernathy, and of course Mr. Datchery, were staying with us that night. They've both remained, as they've been so upset about the theft. What about your other servants? Asked Mary, besides Rosie. I just can't believe anyone in the house was involved. And the constabulary cleared the other servants after they searched and the necklace couldn't be found. Well, one of them took it, Ada said bluntly. We really should meet everyone involved, Mary added, to soften the blow. But how shall I explain why two strange girls are asking people in my house about the crime? Asked Rebecca. That was a good question. Mary was suddenly reminded that they were meant to be a secret constabulary. Perhaps they should. We're doing it for a school project, said Ada. Do you even go to school? Asked Rebecca. No, we don't have projects either. Mary looked at Ada, who seemed perfectly matter of fact about the whole thing, and at Rebecca, who obviously did not. Somehow, a path ahead must be cleared from Rebecca's distress to Ada's curiosity. That what was an exercise to Ada was an adventure to Mary was the heartbreak for Rebecca. It was the time of saying, are we absolutely sure about this? But it was also, and more so, the time for thinking it very loudly and not saying it. I don't think grown-ups ask a lot of questions when you give them simple answers, Mary offered instead, which seemed to do the trick. Very well, then, said Rebecca, drying her tears. We'd best be off. And that is where we'll leave off. We read chapters 9 and 10. I love you.